Welcome to this edition of Tony Talks, and to start things going, we're going to go straight to the US. Donald Trump has just had his first 100 days in office, and I'll go to Tony now and ask him about some of the figures and stats that's coming out of America. Is it good? Is it bad?
Well, Tim, I mean, the GDP for the first quarter was just 0.7%, quite disappointing, really. In fact, a three-year low. And Steve Mnuchin, the US Treasury Secretary, and Gary Cohn, the US Ministry of Economy, just a couple of days ago when they were launching President Trump's tax plan, were saying they were boasting of GDP growth rates of above 3% were possible. And in fact, indeed, Donald Trump himself, one of his key campaign promises was an annual GDP growth rate of 4%. Now, in order for them to be able to fund their tax cut plan, they have to have these growth rates. So it's very difficult, based on the first 100 days of the Trump administration, to see how they're going to achieve that, because that would obviously involve going to Congress with legislation for tax cuts or for big increases in infrastructure spending. And it's very difficult, based on their records so far, to see how they're going to actually achieve that.
Yeah, I understand, and of course 100 days is only really scratching the surface, but you're talking about the tax cuts, and you're talking about obviously the Senate and their involvement. And now they're looking to put $1 billion budget in place. Yes, do you think it's going to happen? Is it too much? Is it too little? Well, it's never too little, is it?
It's $1 trillion.
Sorry, $1 trillion, yes, my apologies.
$1 trillion, it's a lot of money. I mean, basically what they had to do this, they've agreed it, they've just agreed it, because the consequences of not agreeing it would have been a total government shutdown. And the last time that happened was some years ago, and what that means is that federal employees would be laid off, and parks and national parks and all the rest of it would be closed. They came pretty close on Friday to actually shutting down government. In fact, Congress had to pass some emergency legislation just to tide them over for a few days. Now the thing is, Trump's got his spending on defence, but no money for the Mexico war. Despite all his promises on that. And the problem is it has to pass through the US Senate. And now the Republicans have got 52 members in the US Senate, and they need 60 to pass the legislation.
Right.
So they need to have 8 Democrats on board. So there's been a lot of horse trading going on.
Super. I suppose one of the other things that tends to stimulate the growth, of course, in America, being very much an oil-based economy as well, is that, we still have an oil price which is fluttering around, pretty much languishing. Is there anything on the horizon soon, or are we still going to be sort of expecting the same sort of figures going forward?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right, Tim. Look at just under $52 a barrel for Brent crude. Reason for this is that US oil rig count is the highest since 2013, and also Libya's come back online in production, 700,000 barrels output a day.
Okay.
So whilst we've had OPEC cuts, this is sort of counterbalancing that. So probably we're not going to see any significant increase in the price of oil for quite a long time.
Well, another thing that's happened in the last 100 days, of course, is that Mr. Trump has sort of softened his stance on China to a degree, in almost they've been called friends. What's happening in China at the moment?
Well, PMI data just out a few days ago shows it's slowing down in April, 51.2, which was down from 51.8 in March. So slowing down from March, but obviously any number above 50 is positive and does indicate growth. So it could be a temporary blip. What we've seen is an increase in retail spending in China in the first quarter, which bodes well for the economy. So I don't think there's too much to worry about there.
Well, obviously, on top of that, at one stage, where right at the beginning of his term in office, he was accusing the Chinese of currency manipulation and so on and so forth. That obviously relationship seems to have warmed up a little bit. Do you think it's because possibly the Americans are doing the same sort of thing?
Well, I mean, the strong dollar isn't good for Donald Trump's economic agenda, because he wants, he's kept going on about the growth of manufacturing and making America great again and making American manufacturing great again and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, a strong dollar means their exports are very expensive. So actually, he wants the reverse. He wants to have a weaker dollar, and I think he's made some policy statements to that effect recently. So maybe we'll see some policy initiatives to try and achieve a weaker dollar.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for this week's Tony Talks.